Hello?
Hello.
Did you all get a snack? And you're a little bit more awake. I know you've been sitting here all day. And I feel for you. If it makes you feel any better, I'm well napped. I just woke up from my nap about an hour and a half ago, so it's what happens when you're a 24/7 director. Some days you can just go home and take a nap. It was needed. All right, so my name is Penny Talbert. This is me. I'm the executive director at the Ecuador Public Library. I'm also their mascot, evidently. For me, I found that dressing up is a good way to raise money. My best day so far in the 24-hour period was $30,000. And that was Waldo. Yeah, so if you ever need costumes, I'm your girl. I'm sorry? I went into local businesses and wouldn't leave till they gave me money. I hid in their offices. It was a budget crisis. I needed the money that day. I had just laid people off. I wanted to make payroll. That was my only option at that point. That or robbing the local bank. So, I'm coming from a small, I guess it's a small library, medium-sized library in Lancaster County. We have 4 municipalities, about 32,000 people. Our circ was a little over 360,000 last year. We're the largest circulating library in Lancaster County, though we have a very tiny service area. 9 full-time staff, 18 part-time staff. 4 of my full-timers are MLSs, and 2 of my part-timers are MLSs. $824,000 budget, and a total of under $300,000 in all of my tax funding combined, which is where the costumes come in. If you do the math, that means I have to raise more than $10,000 a week to keep my library open. So what I am about to tell you, I did doing those things, so please know that it is not impossible to make a competent library while you have no money, no time, and no staff. It will work. I go on the road a lot and teach this program in a lot of states and a lot of systems throughout Pennsylvania. I am still amazed that this seems to be a novel idea. I don't know if, well, I'm looking around, of course you probably remember in the 80s when we had the big teacher crisis and everybody went to college to become a teacher, and it was suddenly a profession and they started getting paid what they were worth. If we want to become that, we need to be competent. We need to be what we are worth. And I feel that way about every single person on my staff, so we've really tried to do this. We've really tried to have a competent staff. We talk about transliteracy a lot in our library, and it's one of those catchphrases. I don't know if it's gonna stick with us or not. But basically, it is everything we do. It is all of the ways that we communicate. As librarians, we are storytellers in a variety of ways. We deal with all kinds of learners. We deal with visual learners and people who have special needs. We know how to do those things. But we are kind of a weird bunch that some of us, if we don't know something, we avoid it like the plague. We don't jump to learn it. We find somebody on our staff who's good at it, and then they become the iPad person. That's what you don't want to happen, because unless your iPad person is scheduled in your library whenever you are open, eventually someone's going to look dorky. You don't want that to be your staff. Whenever something bad happens, I always address it with, we have an amazing opportunity. And I will give you an example of how this works. Several years ago, I went to a borough council meeting, and because sometimes I'm a little dippy, I showed up in the wrong meeting, but acted like I belonged there after I got the agenda and realized that it was not the community services meeting, but was instead the borough enterprise meeting. But I didn't want to get up and look like a dork, so I stayed there. I was very surprised within the first 5 minutes when people from all over our community showed up with petitions. They were the NIMBYs, the not in my backyarders, who did not want a skate park in their community. in their immediate community. They didn't want it in their backyard because of the problems that skate parks come along with. And because I have no self-control, I immediately put my hand up and volunteered to take a skateboard park, put it on the library property without consulting my board whatsoever. So before they could learn about it in the paper, I got them together and I said, we have an amazing opportunity. I did not say, holy crap, I just promised we could put in a skate park. It has been an amazing opportunity for us, but I guarantee you if I'd gone into that meeting and made it sound like it wasn't, it wouldn't have been. So as you're looking at competencies, don't look at the work side. Don't look at the difficult discussion side. Look at the positive end result. Because as you go through this process, sometimes it's going to be a lot easier to turn your back on it than continue to plow through, because it's going to be difficult at times. Totally worth it. All right. Is there anyone in this room that doubts that their library needs competencies? Okay, next. Thank you. Thank you so much. This is the hard part. This is the really hard part. And depending on what kind of library you're in, if you're in a consolidated system or a federated system, or you're just out there alone independent, or if you're a municipal library, it all depends where you are as far as who you have to get to buy into this. The bigger the organization, the more groups you have to get to buy into it, but you also then have a lot more group power. So either way, it has its upsides and its downsides, but it is possible. And believe it or not, it was much easier than I thought it was going to be. I had more elevator speeches written, and I hate elevator speeches, but I did not have to sell people on this idea as much as I thought I would, which is a good thing. So first I went to the board of directors and, decided, or spoke to, we have this great opportunity, of course, to make sure that all of the patrons in our service area receive the kind of service that they should get, and that it is consistent with every visit, because that's very important. I also went to the Friends of the Library, even though they really didn't have anything to do with the decision. I wanted them to understand it and support it. I wanted them to go out into the community and tell people, you can now go to the library and anybody that's there can teach you how to use your iPad. It's kind of a big deal for a small community. The staff, and I know a lot of you are probably thinking, if we brought this up to our staff, they would have a heart attack. Are you thinking that? Guess what? Staff buy-in is optional. If you're in charge of the library, you make the rules. If the rules are for the correct reason, you shouldn't feel bad about it. You're going to give them plenty of time to learn. They will be given all the training they need. And at the end, I think you'll see that the buy-in is much different than in the beginning. When I first brought this up to my staff, it was almost like zombies had invaded the building. And by the end, they're excited. They wanted to do pre-tests the following year so that they had 2 tests to take. So it does work. Volunteers, if you have volunteers in your library and all of a sudden they start hearing the staff talk about competencies, they may freak out a little bit, so it's always good to let them know what's going on. In addition, this is a huge selling point to donors, huge selling point. If you can guarantee them that their money, their hard-earned money, is going to go towards providing services to the community that they really need, it's a much easier sell. Government officials. As far as buy-in goes, I think a lot of times we forget about them. A lot. One of the things that we did is not only did we explain the competency program to our municipalities, but one of our municipalities actually hired us to make their staff competent as well. So my local borough council, all the borough council members now have wireless networks in their house that we put in. They all have iPads. Their meetings are paperless. Everything is in the cloud. And anyone who's been to a municipal meeting knows that this is like the parting of the seas. Now, when they talk about the cloud, they still look up as though the ordinances are hanging above their heads, but they are paperless. And that made a huge deal when we went to them and said, all of our staff can help you. You can come in, we're gonna train you. We did 6 months of weekly trainings for every person in the borough. And what do you know? Our funding went up. Who would have thunk it? Also, patrons. One of the first things I did, which was kind of fun, was did a 23 things that was a community and library staff activity. So it was an assigned activity for the staff that they had to do the 23 things. We invited the community to participate as well. And we had a drawing when you finished all 23 things, a Kindle for, this was back when Kindles were like, ooh, awesome. A Kindle for the staff member, and a Kindle for the patron. And the patrons would come in and get help with their 23 things from people on staff, which in turn got the people on staff learning how to do it. And it was just kind of a really cool thing that we were sharing that experience with our community the first time around. And also, you know, we reached out to our local chamber, our mayor, just about, well, anyone who would listen, basically, to let them know that now they have this great resource in library staff. We have staff members now going out teaching technology programs for our local social service agency. We have all kinds of activities now because we have enough staff that are technically competent that we can offer these programs to our community, which is where we need to be to remain relevant. That's the whole buy-in part. Believe me, it's not nearly as hard as you're going to think. So this is the part where people kind of stray off from me and maybe don't agree with what I do here, but my policy is that if they do not complete the annual competency exam with a 90% or higher, they are let go. Ooh, that sounds horrible. In 4 years, 2 people have been let go. And both of them, I think, were happy about it. It was, you know, long-term employees who didn't have the technical skills, ready to retire, so I hated to do it, but those are the rules. I don't know if you think it's fair or not. I think it is. If you give your staff the training that they need and the opportunity to learn, there should be no reason why anyone doesn't pass these competencies. We're not asking them to do high-level algebra, which I would fail. By the way, if you're a library director, you have to be good at all of these things. You have to be better than your entire staff at all of them. So if you haven't been visiting Power Library lately, you may want to brush up on that because things change. And just because you knew how to do it 2 years ago. And they keep me on my toes to make sure that I'm also competent. Don't think that I get away with anything. If I make a mistake technologically, they make fun of me for days. So I try not to do it. If you decide to do this, if you decide to do a competency program, and you begin to move forward, just start thinking, I've done it all for you. You can go to my LibGuide, which I'll show you in a minute. You can copy everything and use it for free, forever. You don't have to do anything. So there's a year's worth of work. You got it. In addition, if you visit my website, pennytalbert.com, and this is kind of a sneaky way to do it because I don't want everybody in Pennsylvania to have access, employees. But if you go to pennytalbert.com and you click on the link for Tennessee librarians, all of the exams for the first couple of years are on there. So you can see exactly what the staff was asked. And I continue to update that. I know that this shouldn't be a point, but please pay attention to organization. Most librarians are very, very organized. I am not one of those librarians. So for me, this was very difficult to try to keep the whole program together, which is why I have a wonderful assistant director who should be writing manuals for a living. and she helped. So as you're putting a team together to do this, make sure that you rely on the strengths of your staff members, and know what your limits are as well. Also, don't forget to think about the special services that your library offers that your staff needs to know about. So for instance, do you proctor? If you do proctor, how much does it cost? How do they arrange proctoring? Is there an online form? Those are all things that, while not necessarily technological, people are going to call and ask those questions. So we did throw some of those things in as well. Competencies have to be flexible all of the time because they are going to change every year. Just think about all the services that we're adding and getting rid of as the budget ebbs and flows. Some of them we can control, some of them we can't. So Power Library databases come and go. You know, we had the great mourning period of novelists. So it happens every year. So the competencies are always changing. It should never be a permanent document. And be sure to assemble a team really carefully if you're going to put this into place. I don't assume that any of you work more than 12 hours a day. I'm just guessing. Maybe you do. But you are not going to be able to do this if those 12 hours are already full. Maybe you only work 8. If you do and you're hiring, let me know, because that would be cool. So in order to get ready for this, before you even introduce competencies to your staff, you can start getting them competent without knowing it. Apologies to the men in the room. My mother always told me growing up that the best way to get your husband to do something is to make him think it was his idea. I think that's a Pennsylvania Dutch saying or something. So what we started doing was introducing online tools that they had to use in order to work. So we moved to an online time clock system. So they had to go on their smartphones and clock in when they walked in the building. They had no choice. They had to, I'm trying to think, we started using Asana. Does anyone else in here use Asana? Oh, people. I just know from the fact that you're here that you are busy, 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 busy. Asana is a free website. I don't work for them. It's asana.com. And it's a project management program, kind of a to-do list thing. It's not complicated like Basecamp. It's very easy. And you can assign to do things to people in your library, and they'll get an email every morning with their list of assignments. So if you're working in a team, you can send out assignments and update people without having to talk to them. Not that you don't want to talk to your coworkers, but we're busy. It's a free service. If anyone's a member of Library Think Tank, ALA Think Tank on Facebook, there was a big conversation about this a week or two ago. Libraries are seeing a huge increase in productivity using this library specifically for some reason. I think it's the way our minds organize things, but I'd give it a shot. We started using that, and that really helped as well, for them to come to rely on technology to start their day. It was a good way to get it in. We train from a very basic level. While there's lots of people on our staff that before we started competency training knew how to make spreadsheets and do everything in Excel, we couldn't assume that anyone knew anything. Now, let me finish that up by saying at this point now, there is a hiring exam so that we're not having to train to that level all the time. When employees are coming in now, they're required to have a certain level of technical competency before they even come on staff. Because I don't think they should be applying for jobs at a library if they don't know how to use Excel. So there's that level now that we're trying to push through. We do instructional everything. We have a mega manual at our library. It's the most ridiculous thing in the whole wide world. Our staff manual is 326 pages long. It gives you every procedure of everything that you would ever have to do. And not just, like screenshots with step-by-step instructions on how to put on a hold so that anybody who comes in can't say they can't find the information. It is all there. Like I said, my assistant director is the craziest manual writer in the whole wide world. So there's screenshots and there's videos as part of our staff manual. It has been so helpful as we bring new people in. A week before they start, we say, look at it, you don't have to learn anything, you don't have to look at it if you don't want to, but when you start your first day, go to page 120, and that'll tell you exactly how to get into the building, and we go from there. So it gives them a little bit more, feeling a little bit more secure when they start too, but it also makes sure that when they come in, they already have a certain level of knowledge about the organization. It saves me time. We are very, very bad about ensuring passwords. We all have the passwords to our computers at work, stored with our IT department or whatever. But as we begin opening all of these accounts, Dropbox and Asana, and all of these accounts that we're using for online technology, what I do is I ask the staff to write them all down and put them in an envelope, seal the envelope, and sign their name on the back. I keep them in my desk. I never look at them, but if something were to happen, we would be able to access those accounts. It's a good practice to have. And I will tell you why this happened. 5 years ago, I was in a car accident and had a brain trauma and forgot my passwords for 2 months. That was not good. So we started that policy right after that. It was mostly for me. Introduce tools and devices one at a time. Like if you decide to do this, don't go back and say, okay guys, from now on we're using on the clock to clock you in and out. We're gonna start using LibGuides, don't freak them out. One of the other things that we started to use was a wiki, and ours is the depository for everything. Everything. And staff is required to check the wiki and comment at least once a week. The number of times they check each year is part of their yearly evaluation because it's a number that doesn't matter how I feel about them. It's just what they did throughout the year. And if they don't keep up with that, there needs to be a discussion, but it encourages them to not only share what they've learned and a way for me to teach them new things, but it's also like a really cool way for staff to communicate when you have an organization where they don't always work together. So, if somebody has a new grandchild or somebody gets engaged, then the wiki gets full of photos of that, and that's cool, But I think right now they're organizing they want to have a staff meeting on the Strasburg Railroad. Like they want to take our staff meeting and have it on a train. So right now they're trying to organize that. They don't think I know. I think it's an awesome idea. But so yeah, one at a time though, not whoosh, all at one time, because that's just too overwhelming for anybody. Here's just a list of some tools that you can incorporate into your work week. And I can make sure that Diana has this PowerPoint so you guys don't have to write it down if you don't want to. On the clock, the internal wiki, departmental wikis, JotForm. I don't know what you guys use for surveys, but I use JotForm. I don't know why I don't like SurveyMonkey. I think it might be the logo. I don't know. It works fine. I just don't like using it. Fluid Surveys is a pay site, but if you call them and you're convincing enough about how poor you are, they'll give you lifetime memberships. I've seen it done. Same with Podio. Very, very expensive. Got it for free. Asana is free. Dropbox is free to a point. We use Doodle for everything now. Even if I could walk over and say, hey, let's schedule a meeting, that's how they're scheduled. And I use Basecamp reluctantly just because the library system uses it, but I don't like it. I don't feel like it gives me, it's just not easy for me to navigate for some reason. And I just need to have ease of use so I can actually concentrate on what I'm doing. So those are just a couple. And what we did was we introduced like one every 3 months for the year before competency exams started, and that seemed to work really well. Another piece of advice is what I did, like when I introduced on the clock the first week, I just had the salary folks clock in and out even though they don't have to, just to make sure it worked correctly. And after we were sure we didn't have any bugs, then I moved on to Looking here, making sure there's nobody from my library. Okay. The people that I thought would have the hardest time, they were the first adopters, because then as I moved other people on, those first adopters would be forced to teach the new folks, and then they would learn it. I call it brilliant, others call it lazy. I don't know what it is, but I would rather not have to train 29 people how to clock in on an iPhone app. So that's kind of how we did it, to make sure that everybody felt comfortable with the tool before we actually started implementing it. We do the same thing with all of the services that we offer the public. You may have heard about we started circulating Brokus about 2 years ago. We were the first library in the world, evidently, to have that stupid idea. I mean, it's working, it's great, but it was a lot of work to get through it at first. And when I said to the board, yeah, we're gonna send these home with patrons with an HDMI cable, and we're gonna put together instructional videos that we won't ever get calls asking us how to do it, and they laughed at me. We have not gotten one call from a person, a patron, that checked them out that didn't know how to use them. The reason that is because, again, I took my first adopters and made them take it home and set it up by themselves without their spouse or their kids. They then taught the next round of staff so that when patrons had questions, it never had to get beyond frontline. They could explain it because they'd actually had to do it. We do that with every single service we launch. Launches to the staff probably 2 to 3 months before it launches to the public, because I want them to be experts by the time it goes out. Just some advice from a seasoned veteran. Include competencies in your strategic plan. It's lovely. You can show that plan to anybody and prove to them how committed your library is to quality library services, your donors, your municipalities. I think it's super important. At the time that we did it, we tied EDGE benchmarks and competencies together. Because EDGE benchmarks is now charging, I'm not sure that a lot of people are doing it, so maybe that's not a good idea, but there are other programs out there. There's the Building Digital Communities report. I forget who wrote it, but if you search for that online, that also has a lot of links to competencies that you can use, good statistics and things like that to justify this to your board or whoever else you have to convince. Again, procedure manuals have been our saving grace. Create an employee learning and growth program. Basically, everybody on staff has different CEU requirements than what the state requires. I don't think the state requires enough. I'm sorry. Most of my staff has to do between 10 and 15 CEUs a year. Everyone gets an hour a week of paid education time. Everyone. If they work 3 hours a week, they get paid for 4 hours a week, and they use one of those hours for furthering education. I am very, very, very loose in my interpretation of furthering education. It does not mean you have to sit in a class. It doesn't mean you have to sit in a webinar. It does mean you have to learn something. And my kind of checks and balances on this whole thing is that every week when they're done with their hour, they just log on to a form and write 2 sentences to let me know what they did, just so I have a record of that. I am finding that the staff is, on average, even the part-timers, are bringing in 20, 25 CEUs a year. Makes a huge difference in the culture of your organization when they're actively learning and teaching each other, and it's not, it's part of the lunchroom conversation. That's awesome. And then they are also given the opportunity, if they want to at staff meetings, to give a quick 5 minutes about what they've learned. I'm dancing, it's cool. We also require them to give us a learning plan each year. At the beginning of the year, just hand in something with me to tell me what you're gonna do. What blogs are you reading every week? What RSS feeds are you following? What magazines are you reading? And then throughout the year, they often share that stuff on the wiki. I don't tell them to, but if they find something that's particularly relevant, they'll do that. We also included this phrase: successful completion of annual competency training and exams is required for all positions. All positions. I don't care if it's an executive secretary. If they walk through the library when patrons are in the building, they are assumed by patrons to be librarians. So the least they can do is have basic competencies in technology. For me, that has not been a problem. I haven't had anyone even question that, because I think that this has really pulled together the organization as a team, and we're in it together. But that successful completion thing, to have in your job descriptions, if you choose to do learn or leave, that's what you're going to refer to when someone files for unemployment. That it is a part of their job description. And I would recommend giving them at least 12 months notice that that job description is changing, because no one's trying to trick anyone. This is just the new reality of libraries, is you have to be competent. And lastly, I felt it was really, really important to put together a social media policy, because we are now asking all of our library staff to become active in our social media world, since they are now all technically competent. So we wanted to have the staff clearly understand, number one, when you are working for the library in the social media world, you don't use your personal social media accounts. So I have a personal Facebook and a professional Facebook. And when I'm tagged in photos, library photos, I'm tagged to my professional Facebook. My personal Facebook is completely separate, because we know from working in public libraries that we just have creepers all over the place. And as a safety for those staff members, in addition, then they actually are more likely to accept friend requests from patrons, and some really interesting, wonderful relationships come out of having those professional social media accounts. So that social media policy was really important for us, and it is up on my website. Feel free to steal it. As you're getting ready, the hardest part really is to develop what competencies you're going to use and how you're going to ease them into it. Because if you show up with a 57-page document of competencies that you want your staff to do, they're all going to quit. Maybe, I would think they would. So as you start to develop them, start small. This doesn't have to be, you don't have to do it in a year. You have to take a step in a year. Just like, think of it as a human capital campaign. How do you like that? Because staff is human capital. It's the most important thing we have. We're just building the value of our staff long term. So really think about what you want them to know first. And this is a great exercise that we do. Try it at a staff meeting. If you have a staff member who's not afraid to make a fool of themselves, have them stand in front of the screen with their back turned and pretend like they answered the phone for a patron, and the patron says, "Could you please tell me how to get to Power Library?" and have them do it without looking at the screen. If they can do that, they know how to get to Power Library. We started doing that, and it's a lot of fun. To try to, at staff meetings, we'll just at the end say, who wants to try to walk somebody through getting to like a 5th subpage of our website or something like that. It's really cool that you're able to do it, and sometimes when you're on the phone with a patron, you don't have a screen in front of you. So to be able to like close your eyes and walk through the website, that means you've spent a good time on the website, and that's what you should be doing as a staff member. Again, select your design team carefully. I am willing to do short, free consultations for anybody that needs it. I've phoned into board meetings to help directors convince their board to do competencies. I've talked to directors whose staff has asked me to talk to them because the staff wants to do competencies. So I'm happy to have difficult conversations with you or help you if you want to. Timeline, and it has to be an unmovable timeline. So last year, when my library experienced the worst budget crisis in our history, I had to lay off half the staff. That did not interfere with our timeline at all. They kept going on their things. They still got that little paycheck for training, but their hours were cut for a couple of months. They knew they were coming back, but sometimes stuff gets in the way and you have to kind of try to have some planning done on how you're going to deal with that. Or if you lose a key staff member from your design team, that can't stop the project from going forward. Be really, really mindful of how you introduce your staff to the big idea. Again, guys, we have a great opportunity. They're going to probably be so scared. And it's just fear of the unknown. I didn't say, hey, we're gonna do this great program and if you don't get an A, you're fired. But I didn't hold that off till the last minute either, because I wanted them to know how serious the board and I were about this. But there's a way to approach this that they understand that they're not being attacked, that it's a team project and we're doing it for our community. We're not doing it to get rid of people. Alleviate fears in any way you can. Again, this is where costumes come in handy for me. I don't know what you guys do to alleviate fears, but that seems to be the best way to do it. I think I was talking to you about it because my library has no money at all. Budget meetings are always fun. Last year, I was in tears with these budget meetings. So this year at our first budget meeting, I showed up dressed like a wizard and informed the board that if they wanted me to perform magic, I thought it only appropriate that I dress that way. It changed the tone of the entire budget committee meeting. And what took us 6.5 hours last year was done in 2 hours and no one was crying. And I swear to you, it's because I was dressed like a wizard. I know it sounds crazy, but it changes the tone of the meeting. It's a little hard to get mad at somebody when they're wearing a big wizard hat. So that's kind of how I alleviate fears. Everybody has their own weird things, I guess. Mine's just more public. Just some quick questions that you're gonna have to ask yourself. How do you get ready for this? Who's gonna be your project lead? It doesn't have to be you. Maybe it shouldn't be you. What's your competency level? You may have to be learning with the rest of them, and it's okay. If you have to learn with the rest of them, make sure they know that you don't know a certain topic, because it makes them feel better, because you're a real human being. Who's gonna be on your design team? Who's gonna contribute? So do you have people, for instance, for us, I had somebody who was like amazing at genealogy, a staff member. So they took care of genealogy training. Everything that I would have done would have just been curated from someone else. So for our particular resources, I found someone, on staff who could do that. It doesn't have to be a librarian. Librarians, I think we all can agree, often have like niche interests that are strange but very useful. And there's a lot of them with those genealogy interests, and that's a great way to bring it into training. And don't be afraid to use people outside of your normal sphere of training. So maybe you have a board member or something who's really good at one of these things. Oh, wouldn't it be awesome if a board member trained the staff? That would be fantastic. Or maybe not, depends what your board is, I guess. Your timeline. Who has the knowledge and skill set to act as a mentor? Again, I kind of turned that around and made the mentors the people who really were the ones that needed mentoring. But that worked for us. That may not be the case with your library. You have to make sure that you're considering multiple learning styles whenever you're doing this training. Because the point is not to have them struggle to get through the material, the point is for them to learn it. So if they can't learn by reading a document, then find a video. There's training material for every single thing in the world out there. Everything. Search YouTube. Look through university libraries. Often they have tutorials on their library websites. The information is out there, you just need to find it. And again, most of it I found, and you just copy it from me. what delivery method are you going to use? After a long time of investigation, I chose to use LibGuides for a variety of reasons. First, it was free because the state had purchased it and I was one of their trainers. So I got that awesome training in LibGuides from the state so I could go out and train other people, and I thought, hey, we shouldn't be wasting that. Like with many things though, the state stopped paying for LibGuides. So I had to make some negotiations with them. If you aren't yet a subscriber and you call SpringShare to subscribe to this, Dave, who's the salesman, Dave Ware is the Pennsylvania salesman, tell him you were at a training with me and I told him that he should give you a discount. I tell everybody that. It's driving him crazy. Just go ahead and do it. He might. I've heard of folks who've gotten it. How is this all going to be monitored? Who from your organization is going to go on this competency website and check every week to make sure your staff is doing the work? That's a job. It is not a director job. You shouldn't be spending your time doing that, but someone on your staff or your team should. And then also, the recording of participation, but on some of the weeks that they comment, you want to make sure that you read those and respond to those. Another really good option to have is we have an anonymous question form, because a lot of times we found that people weren't asking questions because they felt like they were stupid. So we did an anonymous question form that they submit questions about anything, and we address them at staff meetings just as anonymous questions and answer it to the whole staff. Because I'm figuring if one of them has that question, there might be more that aren't willing to ask the question. So we've tried to make a lot of things anonymous. Because for me, the answer to the question, who answered it doesn't matter. I just want to know that everyone gets it. So if there's a couple of people that don't get it, I have to do my job better to make sure they get it. I just need to know whether or not they all get it or not. Does everyone else have really, really good looking APS guys? Just wonder if it's just something I forgot. Anyways, make sure that when you go with the delivery method that you have enough money to support it for more than 1 year. Because you're going to be keeping it on. This is going to have to be something that's in your budget. If you use Wikispaces, an educational account is free, doesn't have as many options. LibGuides for me, I think the retail price is about $595 a year. A little trick, if you are a grant writing library like I am and you're constantly applying for grants, LibGuides is so multifunctional that you could easily write a subscription to that into a grant each year and make sure that that's covered for other things as well. We use them for public learning guides, so they are definitely grant worthy as far as a delivery tool for material. Always allow feedback, don't take it personally. Make sure that some of your activities, you require them to submit files so they know how to do it. Attach files to emails, turn files into PDF files, all of those things that we have to do on a regular basis that we take for granted, that staff may not often be asked to do. But when they are, they have to know how to do it. And easy navigation, I'm all about that. I don't like to click 20 times to get to the information I need, and I don't think the staff should have to do that to learn something. Anything that's in the way of learning is a problem for us. So this is our competency guide, and again, you can steal all of this. When you first log on, if you start the program, the really cool part about LibGuides is that you can control when the tabs are published. So the first week that they logged on, there was one tab. That would be overwhelming if you logged on to that your first day. So we release tabs as we train. Because if I went onto this without knowing what it was, I would just click away. I don't have the attention span for all that stuff. So that's what we've done, and it really has worked out pretty well. Our self-directed learning, they can do webinars, conferences. We do a lot of in-service days, staff meeting instruction. We do instruction on site. We do a lot of games. Competency Family Feud, we play that. We play Competency Minute to Win It. We play Competency Charades. We have lots of games that we've somehow adapted. Competency Life-Size Candyland, no kidding. It exists now. Skillsoft, if you're not using Skillsoft, that the state now provides you for free. When I found out about Skillsoft, the first thing I did was make it a requirement for every member of my staff within 7 days to sign up for an account. Super, super, super awesome. And none of us are using it probably. Is anyone using it? One? Okay. When we measure learning, there is a demonstrative competency exam, at which time the staff member sits with myself and the assistant director, and we actually role play as a patron. So, hey, can you help me hook up to the public wireless network? Can you show me how to use a template in Word? Can you show me how to set up a budget spreadsheet? And the staff member just does that for us. Then they have a written competency exam, which is about 100 questions. Again, the first year it was 80% or above was passing. The second year it was 85%, and now it's 90%. I believe last year all of my employees scored as 97% or higher. And some of them are in their 70s. So don't tell me people can't do it. Everyone can do it. We had a woman at the EFRA workshop, was an elderly Amish woman. Remember her, Diana? And she thought competencies were the coolest thing in the whole wide world. She thought everybody had to learn them. So that made me feel really good. I do a lot of surveys with the staff. Most of them are anonymous because I'm not asking the information because I want to get anybody in trouble. I'm asking the information because I really want to know how we can change processes to meet their needs. When I first started this, I did a pre-competency survey and found out that over 50% of my staff thought that Amazon was a search engine. You can imagine the sleepless nights following I'm glad I didn't know who answered that. I would have just lost it. I was furious for days. I couldn't even believe it. Because I thought we were doing pretty good. I thought we knew what we were doing, but then that happened, and whoa, it really set me for a loop. If you don't know Skillsoft, do it. WebJunction, do it. Great way to train your staff for free. This is what we did year one. Basically, we introduced them to it. We did 23 things, which you can get all of that on the competency sheet. We did a book discussion group of dealing with a difficult patron. Every week they had to read a chapter and then comment on the LIB guide to questions that we asked. They loved it so much that we're now doing book discussion groups of nonfiction library books as a staff online. It's not mandatory. But let me kind of follow up here and I'll answer a lot of your questions. There's a lot of things that I can't cover today. To put out a little, I think November 10th, I have an upcoming longer webinar with Strategic Libraries Magazine. I don't even know if it costs money. I have no idea. So, but I know that that's coming up and it's longer. But one of the things that I found was absolutely vital to this program was to make sure your staff had fun learning. And fun doesn't always have to be with learning, but just like kids, we love rewards for doing good. And I have a fairly competitive group of employees. They have their own competitive kickball team. They challenge like the police department and stuff. They have their own bowling team. I can't even remember, it's something stupid, something from the Big Bang Theory. They like to do stuff together. We have 29 women working in one building, and they don't fight. absolutely amazing. Bonnie, her daughter interned with me for a summer. She can tell you we had an awesome time when she was there. She's an awesome kid. But yeah, we try to make it fun. You're allowed to make mistakes. It's okay if you screw up. The point at the end of the day is that we just want you to understand, not regurgitate information like so many of us have to learn things, but actually understand the process. For instance, go back and ask your staff to tell you what the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web is. I would love to know if you get any answers that are even close to accurate. Ask them what the invisible web is. Do patrons come up to the desk and ask us those questions? No. But it's super important to know. You have to understand how it works in order to navigate it. If they don't understand what the invisible web is, that all the information that we're really looking for, not all of it, but a lot of it, is down there, then they know how to approach a search. So you really just have to work on the foundations and just continue to learn. It is a round-the-year process. I don't ever see an end date for this program in my library. I think it'll survive a lot longer than I will, simply because of the way we've put it in place. It's now policy. And I think that's really important. I want to give you time for questions, because I've already run over and I still have lots of slides, but Does anyone have any questions? Bonnie, were you still there when we started our competency program?
I was, but at the system level, I was only kind of
But you heard about it
when I heard it from Stephanie.
and how scary it was. Some people don't like it. Some people feel like it's really, really not fair, but I can tell you that my employees think it's fair. They actually love it now. They're so happy when they learn new things and they share it, and learning has become part of our culture. We're a knowledge hub, we're a technology hub. We have to kind of live and breathe that whenever we're at work. Questions? You just waiting for dinner? Yeah.
What was the driving force of the Charlotte Hurricanes back then? Made you want to initiate all this?
Not being able to attach emails or files to an email. I heard it 3 times in one day and almost lost my mind. Like, seriously, you can't do that as a CERT desk person? And I thought, oh my God, what else can't they do that I think they can do? And that's when the pre-survey came out, and when I wanted to crawl in a hole and die. But when you guys do it, you're not alone, because there's libraries now doing it all over the country, and we're sharing that information. So you don't be surprised. I would be shocked if the results came back higher than your expectations of a pre-survey. I would say almost in all cases it's going to come back lower than your expectations. And that's okay. Yes?
Penny, can you share one of the free surveys, competency surveys?
Yeah, it's on my website. I'm serious. Like, I will share everything with you. I want you to be able to use this. It was a lot of work for us. Why would I want anyone else to go through that? You've got the first probably 1.5 to 2 years already designed. So it'll be easier to start, yeah.
I was looking at some of your links, and it looks as if you have adapted the 23 things to a page that make it more specific to.
Right, we did a reference one last year. I am now in the midst of youth services competencies. We also have a passport office and a post office that we run in my library, and those employees, because they are library employees, we have a contract with the Department of State. They have their own competencies, because people still walk into the passport office and ask library questions. And if I don't have a passport office, I can't stay open, because that's where I get more money. I make more money from passports than I do from all my funding from tax money put together. So that $250,000 a year we make on passports at $25 a pop. So we do a lot of them. But even those people have to know library stuff. And notary, we're opening notaries too now. We're notary. You can get your title transferred for your car at the library if you want. Any other questions? Are your brains like so full from this week? It's okay. If you think of some later, feel free to email me. I have cards up here if you want them. Yeah.
Was your board like on through it like right away? Like how did they feel about like people being adopted buyers?
They're softies, but the new reality in library funding is that incompetence can cost you a lot. So I think that they saw the logic to it and the fact that we want to be a professional organization. We don't want people think we're run by volunteers, and sometimes they think that because they come in and ask questions and we're done like we don't know what we're doing. So of course they think we're volunteers. We should be professionals all the time and we should be able to answer those questions. So I think the board understood that pretty quickly. And I'm really lucky to have a lot of educators on my board. I have a retired superintendent, a school psychologist, a couple of teachers. So it was a little bit easier because, you know, teachers have to do this too. It's not like this is some novel idea that I dreamt up. So yeah, it wasn't that bad.
Was it like based on the 9% or whatever? Was that based on just a written exam? But was it all? Did you also like how did you accommodate people who maybe are not have learning disabilities or not good test takers to demonstrate their competencies? Like
We do the demonstrative part and the written part, and the grades are all combined. So as long as you pull a 90, there's no time limit on it. You know, I try to make it as casual as possible. Like when they go into the room to take their competence exams, I make them snacks. I really try not to make it super stressful. They can do it on their time, like they can schedule it when they want. And we really haven't had any issues that the staff complained about how it was done or anything like that. I've never even had anyone say, I think that answer was right, because we craft the questions in such a way that there has to be a correct answer. I don't want gray area. Anyone else? Are y'all gonna go back and do competencies now? Is that on your list of 500 things you're gonna do after this week? Does anyone already have competencies in their library at all? How many of you actually think you're gonna do it? Nice. Please keep me informed, because I have a growing list of libraries all over the country that are doing it, and it would be really nice, you know, to maybe, I've been thinking about starting some kind of message board or something where libraries can compare notes. I mean, I'm working with this library in Long Island that their tax funding is $1,000 per capita. And they actually told me they couldn't afford a subscription to Universal Class. I yelled at them for like a half an hour. I was like, are you kidding me? Do you know what I have to do for $100? Like, I couldn't believe it. And then I'm working with a library in Tennessee that has essentially no taxpayer funding. Their director, they put out an ad for a director a couple of months ago, and it was $7.75 an hour to start, and it was salaried. Like, that was what you made, and the job description was 4 pages long. If they can do it, anybody can do it. And they're doing it. So, you know, feel free to, if you have questions, email me. Sometimes it takes a little time to get back to you, because I do triage. It is fund drive season, and I need to raise $130,000 in the next month, so that comes first. But you guys will be second. Okay? Any other questions? On my cards?
I said, can you come back and do fundraising class?
I would love to, but we'd all have to wear costumes.
I'm done.
Yeah. Does anyone else do that? Do you know how much fun that is to do that at